So traditional brainstorming is flawed, right? Groupthink, people not wanting to speak up, endless meetings. What can we do about it? Hi, I'm Chris, I'm a doctor. I've read this book, Sprint, and I'll summarise all the key concepts of this so you don't have to really bother reading the book at all. Sprint was a concept first designed by Google, and they found that 5 intense days of work with relevant people in the room can lead to testing out an idea that you generate, a prototype, and actually get feedback from this. This can move much faster than traditional ways. And so what you'll need in the room are key people, but also a mix of people. For example, you may have researchers or engineers. You need perhaps the chief financial officer and marketing experts, but also, crucially, you need the decision maker. The decision maker is the person who's ultimately going to give the green light to pay for this. Now, ideally, the decision maker would be throughout the 5 days of the sprint process, but if not, they need to be brought in and give their approval and support to the sprint process. Now, what you're wanting to do also is actually get this troublemaker, the person who will play devil's advocate often, because in a sprint situation, somebody who's asking difficult questions, in fact, is an asset, because they're actually asking the difficult questions so that you have different perspectives and therefore can adapt to overcome potential obstacles. The book gives examples of where Sprint was successful. For example, robots delivering items to hotels. There was concern about, would the guests be freaked out by this? How should the robot talk? Also, another example was a shop that sold online coffee. And rather than categorizing coffee into the regions that it's produced, they found that actually the customers wanted to know what coffee do I use if I percolate my coffee, or if I make espressos with this machine. So they categorized it in that way, and they found that their website was a lot more useful. But really, what you want to do in a sprint in those 5 days is go after the most important problem, and that's where the sprint can help make progress, even if it's a large, complicated problem. So the 5 days are around 6 hours each, with an hour off for lunch. It's important to have a no device policy. There's a couple of exceptions that you can use your device during a break, or if you leave the room. We've all got potential emergencies that you need to attend to. In your actual sprint, you really want a room with a massive giant whiteboard so that people can work together, collaborate, and ultimately write a long-term goal at the top. And your goal should reflect your team's principles and aspirations. Think of the long-term goal, then imagine if it actually failed, how would it fail? And then you question your assumptions. And that way of then rephrasing an assumption, how would it lead to failure, can actually make you think, well, how would we stop something failing? So it would actually bulletproof your potential design that you make in future. So on Monday, day 1 of the sprint, you'd map out the process. This map would show your customers moving from where they are to utilizing your service or your product. And basically Monday is the mapping day, and you'd use your map to narrow down a broad challenge into a specific target. And later in the week, that map will actually provide structure for you, for your solution sketches and your prototype. And ultimately, the map helps you keep track of how everything will fit together. And it eases the burden on each person's short-term memory, because they can just look at it there. You would tend to, on the left, have the actors. Now, these are the most important people. Tends to be the customers, but often you'll have other people, such as a government regulator or a sales team, and these people should all be listed on the left. Then on the right, you're really mapping the ending, And then it's just the middle of the story, which often you'll have words or arrows or little boxes, and this map should really be functional to guide from the left the customer where they will go through to get to your product or service. It's important to keep it simple, and you don't need any drawing expertise. Typically you'd get about 5 to 15 steps, and ask the people in the room. You've typically got around 7 people in the room who all know about what you're trying to achieve. So you'd say, does this look right? Because one person from, say, marketing may not understand a salesperson's perspective, and then you can collaborate to improve the map and have it so that there's actually more information there by utilizing the expertise in the room. What you then do is get each individual to get sticky notes out and write, how might we? And this creates then a wall full of opportunities which you're later going to vote on. And the ones that have the most votes, or perhaps the ones that the decision maker just says that's the one we're going for, that is then going to be the target of your sprint going forward. So you're just going to spend about 10 minutes, but each person in the sprint on their own, individually, fill in as many sticky notes as they can, saying, how might we? They generate lots of sticky notes. Then the facilitator or the group collectively would quickly put them into categories. Now what you would then do is also have another category. You don't have to be too scientific here, just group them roughly so that then you can move forward. I really like this concept of dot voting. Everybody then is given a single sticker and they have to simply put that on the idea that they think is best. Now equally, the decision maker could either have just the ultimate decision, or they may have 2 stickers to have more sway in what gets targeted. But ultimately, this process means that people can think individually, independently, and just put the sticker on and you come to a decision. You don't have endless meetings that happen every quarter in which you rehash the same things. So at the end of day 1, you've then agreed on a problem, and you've also got a particular point that you want to focus on. Now the facilitator I've just briefly mentioned before, but they're crucial in the sprint because they're capturing ideas, writing lists, summarising discussions, and also keeping the team on track. In addition, they may well be recruiting people to test the prototype. Now during the sprint, it's important to actually make a decision and then move on. And the facilitator should also do that. You can't keep going back, well maybe this thing, because throughout the whole process there'll be many decisions and you need to take the decision and move on. Just remember, as a whole, great innovation is built on existing ideas that have been repurposed with vision. Now day 2 is mainly creating sketches. So there's a 4-step sketch process. Starting up, just booting up, 20 minutes individually, taking notes on what's been written down on your big whiteboard, the map, and also the various post-it notes that have had potential opportunities. The people are doing that individually, copying down the long-term goal, and then merging all this together and just writing down anything that they feel useful. This 20-minute process is really to get people processing it in their mind, what is the best solution. Then they'll take another 20 minutes doing exactly that, just writing down rough ideas. Then you have this process in which it's called Crazy Eights, and this is a form of rapid sketching in which you get an A4 sheet, simply fold it 3 times, just like this. So 1, 2, 3, and then what you're going to do is you're going to have 8 little bits. Now for the next 30 seconds each, you will just jot down really quickly in 8 of those sections a bit about what an idea is. So it would be a real quick sketch, 60 seconds, takes you 8 minutes to have your A4 thing. It doesn't have to be particularly legible because it's only going to be read by the person who's doing it. Then finally, unfortunately, just after you've done these 8 sketches, you're then going to take half an hour to draw your solution sketch, a well-formed concept with all the details that you've worked out based on these crazy 8 sketches that you've done before. On Wednesday, everybody will then come together again and critique everybody's sketches and then collaborate and pick the best ones. By merging individuals' work at that point, you can then make an optimum solution. On day 4, Thursday, you go into then use the final optimum sketch to build a prototype, and it very much depends upon what the project is. But the prototype doesn't have to be by any means the delivered product. It could just be a few pages on a website so that you're getting feedback at that point from the customer. Because day 5, that's when you actually get external people in. You get potential customers, your client base, to come and review the prototype. Now, these testers, you can recruit them from the internet. Usually the facilitator would have started to do this earlier in the process, putting up an ad on something like Craigslist. It's very specific though that what you don't want to do is people just attending who are interested in the free voucher. Because you have to give an incentive for people's time. So you may have a link on your Craigslist ad to a Google form that has lots of questions that are deliberately not leading, so that if you want somebody who's interested in a particular card game, you would get those rather than just somebody who's saying, I want that voucher. Equally, so you have a few options, you then invite them in. You're ideally wanting about 5 testers. You may want to invite a couple more so that they actually show up. So on Friday, the final day of the sprint, you've got your makeshift research lab. In essence, you've got 2 rooms, one in which you're going to invite each tester in individually, and in the other room, you've got the rest of the sprint team watching live on the web, taking down notes, and really assessing the potential client's reactions. At that point, patterns will emerge. When you've got about 5 people who have gone through this process, you may find that they are all saying similar things. You're not doing this in kind of research until it's completely saturated. You're just doing a quick thing, a test of your prototype, and the team are there writing on a new fresh whiteboard with ideas, and collectively they'll then reflect and think, well look, let's draw the most accurate conclusions here. So in the interview process, what you really want to do is be friendly, so the person who comes in is relaxed and gives their honest, candid feedback. So a bit of small talk, and then just make very clear that you're wanting feedback. There's no right or wrong answers. Introduce the prototype. Give the customer, the potential tester, time to look at it, and just ask them to think out loud. Perhaps you may want to mention a sentence and just stop it halfway so that the potential customer would then complete that sentence for you. It's important also to ask follow-up questions, and ask the person to summarize it for you. Then you simply thank them, give them their voucher, and the next person will come in and you'll do the same thing. So really these open-ended questions, broken questions, and just genuinely having a curious mindset to say, what are you actually thinking of here? So then at the end of the day, you've had the testers through, they've tested this prototype. Everybody should then read the board in silence and write down their own patterns, making a list of all the patterns that people have actually noticed, putting positive reactions, negative reactions, or perhaps even neutral reactions, then wrap it up. bring it all together, review your long-term goals, and think, what have we learned from these interviews? What are the next steps? Because even if the prototype turns out to be completely flawed, you will have learnt a lot from that, and you'll also have saved yourself a lot of time from how people would often traditionally develop product. So in summary, Sprint's a 5-day process. It allows a small group to take time out and map a problem and then actually agree on an initial target. They'll work independently at times, sketching things down and bringing these together. They'll use dot voting so that there's no long debates. Decisions can be made quickly, and that's why it's very important to have the key decision maker in the room. That this'll skip out endless meetings, and then having this prototype mindset means that you can quickly test out an idea with potentially real target customers and get their honest reactions and come with a way forward. So you'll ask me, Chris, what do you think about this in the NHS? Well, I don't think this would work too well in the National Health Service. I think it would work quite well in healthcare startups. I believe, though, that some of these ideas could be readily implemented in the NHS, because the fact is we wouldn't get 5 days off, but you could have maybe an adapted sprint. I don't know what a shorter sprint would be called, but it would maybe be a 5-meter race, and that would be an hour or two brainstorming a problem, looking at potential solutions, putting up ideas, using the dot technique, and then having action points and keeping those meetings quite regular but driven with a purpose in which you're testing things and making sure that it will help. I hope that's helped you. Look forward to seeing you next time.